Hello everyone, welcome to the Lightning Ball channel. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please do so and activate the notification bell. Your support fuels my continued efforts. In our last episode, we touched on the moment during Rimuru's conflict with the Eastern Empire when one of the three mystic admirals, Abara, sought out Milim. After sharing crucial intelligence, she declared her allegiance to Milim's camp. Following this, a new round of Walpurgis was convened, drawing demon lords to the scene, only to find Guy's castle largely in ruins. This left everyone deep in thought. In this episode, we will delve into the causality of angelic and demonic skills, the correspondence between the 7 virtues skills and the 7 sins skills, as well as the skills of the various demon lords. Let's get started. The central feature of the Walpurgis venue was a massive circular stone table, neatly arranged with tea, showcasing the remarkable standards of the maids. The octagram demon lords, seemingly in silent agreement, each took their seats, only to notice the space between Rimuru and de Gruel was left vacant. De Gruel openly inquired about waiting for Dino, drawing the attention of the other demon lords towards Guy. Guy then cast a glance towards Rimuru, shooting him a knowing look with a grin. Rimuru, somewhat speechless, saw that Guy was even tossing this explanation his way. After a brief complaint, Rimuru straightforwardly addressed the truth about Dino's betrayal. As Rimuru's words fell, the atmosphere became grave once more. Rimuru disclosed everything about Dino, from Guy's decision to let Dino stay within the Monster Federation to Dino being swayed by Michael's ultimate dominion during the war with the Eastern Empire and defecting to the enemy. De Gruel picked up on the nuance, suggesting that it seemed less like betrayal and more like being dominated. What intrigued de Gruel, however, was this being named Michael, whose mere skill possessed its own consciousness. Rimuru, having Monoceal as his partner, didn't doubt this reality and further clarified to de Gruel that Michael not only had its own consciousness but had also taken over Rudra's body. Luminous then interjected, focusing on the capability of ultimate dominion to completely dominate all angelic skills, raising a critical question about how the vague concepts of angelic and demonic realms are distinguished, a point on which Rimuru also had no answers. At this moment, Guy, the oldest of the demon lords, stood up, poised to unveil the workings of the world concerning the causality between angelic and demonic realms. The origin of skills needed to be addressed first. The laws of this world were established by the Star King Dragon Veldanava, yet anyone with administrative rights could also influence these laws to a certain degree. Even without such rights, one could pray through the magicules to alter the laws to an extent, which was the concept of magic. Skills, then, were systematized influences on these laws. The angelic ultimate skills created by Veldanava, which reside within souls of strong will and feed off that pure energy to activate, include the virtues, 7 of the most powerful angelic ultimate skills. Guy shared with everyone that during his battle with Veldanava, Veldanava possessed numerous ultimate skills. However, once the world settled, Veldanava dispersed these skills except Lord of Justice, leading to a cycle of reincarnation for these skills. Over time, these skills manifested in souls deemed worthy. The virtue ultimate skills were incredibly powerful, so to maintain balance, restrictions were placed on levels above unique skills. They were either broken down into various abilities or became unique skills still holding virtue powers, degraded versions of ultimate skills. Hearing Guy's explanation, Luminous continued to probe, pointing out that angelic abilities surely extend beyond the 7 virtues. She asked Guy how many angelic abilities there were in total. Hearing Luminous' question, Guy paused for a moment without directly answering her query. Instead, he began by explaining the 7 virtue ultimate skills that Veldanava possessed. These abilities included the ultimate skill Lord of Justice, which could mentally dominate opponents and featured the truly absolute defense capability known as Castle Guard, combining the strongest defense with command abilities. Lord of Wisdom was the power to manage the world's laws. Lord of Oath served as a spatial management ability. Lord of Hope managed the source of life and the cycle of reincarnation. Lord of Purify differentiated various laws to prevent interference between them, thereby producing pure energy. Lord of Charity specialized in support and enhancement abilities, which was transferred to Velgrind. Lastly, Lord of Patience stabilized conditions to deal with unforeseeable events, a power given to Velzard. Guy then stated that of the 7 known virtue ultimate skills, only 3 could be confirmed currently. After the exchange of Lord of Oath from Rudra with Veldanava's Lord of Justice, and following Veldanava's demise, it had vanished. Regarding Rudra's Lord of Justice, Guy knew it had the power to compel obedience but believed it to be even more powerful. As he explained, Guy's gaze shifted towards Rimuru. The attention of everyone present once again turned to Rimuru. Rimuru proceeded to share that, given Lord of Justice had controlled Veldora not so long ago, Rimuru truly feared everything came to end. While voicing this, Rimuru couldn't help but vent about Guy, suggesting all the trouble was pushed onto him under the guise of settling a score with Rudra, when in fact it amounted to full-scale warfare. However, to Guy, these complaints seemed to go in one ear and out the other, laughing it off by saying since they had won, it didn't really matter. Seeing Guy show no signs of apologies, Rimuru could only sigh and then went on to explain the ultimate dominion ability of Lord of Justice in detail. This power allowed Michael to exert absolute domination over anyone possessing angelic ultimate skills, regardless of whether they were mere humans or true dragons, leaving them unable to resist. The evidence was clear not only with Veldora but also with Velgrind, who possessed Lord of Charity and had been dominated. Guy confirmed Rimuru's findings, adding that Velzard, the holder of Lord of Patience and the oldest surviving true dragon, had also been dominated by Michael. While the sight of the partially ruined castle upon arrival had given everyone a sense of foreboding, hearing the facts laid out stirred considerable unease. De Gruel felt shaken, lamenting that the situation had indeed progressed to the worst-case scenario. As one of the oldest demon lords, De Gruel was well aware of the immense strength of Frost Dragon Velzard. In contrast, the newer generation's Rimuru didn't have a tangible sense of Velzard's power, aware of the danger but unable to gauge its extent. Rimuru thought optimistically that perhaps Guy had already defeated Velzard, and the main agenda of this meeting was to discuss how to deal with Velzard. Pondering the situation, Rimuru cautiously asked Guy about Velzard's condition. Guy scoffed at Rimuru, suggesting it was foolish to expect such an ideal outcome. Ignoring Rimuru's question, both Leon and Luminous wore expressions of bitterness, understanding just the fact that even Guy hadn't managed to secure a victory, and Velzard had left unscathed, made it hard to imagine they could defeat their opponent. This difficulty was compounded by the strength of individuals like Feldway and Dino, along with Michael's aberrant power to dominate others, leaving everyone unable to see a path to victory. Milim, however, seemed unaffected by this somber mood, excitedly stating that with 7 of the Octagram Demon Lords present, they had a prime opportunity to demonstrate the true might of Demon Lords. Guy then timely brought the discussion back on track, delivering more unsettling news about the angelic powers. He indicated that there were definitely more than just the 7 virtue ultimate skills. While unsure of the exact number, Guy recalled that Veldanava had planned to bestow an ultimate skill on each of the 7 angels of origin, suggesting at least 14 angelic powers existed. De Gruel, quick to understand, grasped the implications of Guy's words, suggesting these skills must have remained untransferred. Guy nodded, explaining that back then, the consciousness of the angels was somewhat feeble, with some unable to wield ultimate skills effectively. Therefore, Veldanava only transferred abilities to those deemed worthy, and the remaining skills were released. Combining the information provided earlier, the full picture emerged. The angelic ultimate skills that hadn't been transferred fell into a cycle of reincarnation. While not all may have manifested in the world yet, it was uncertain where they resided. In such circumstances, if these powers were discovered by the enemy, the adversary would instantly gain a new ally, marking the crux of the current crisis. Having discussed the angelic ultimate skills, the narrative then shifted to the demonic ultimate skills. Just as the primordial demons correspond to the 7 angels of origin, the demonic skills also share a causal relationship with the angelic skills. Take, for instance, Guy's ability, Lord of Pride, which originated from the unique skill Pride. Guy acquired it through observation, imitation, and prayer to the world during his battle with Veldanava. It wasn't a power bestowed by Veldanava, nor was it an innate special privilege like Ramiris possessed. Contrary to the purely angelic skills, the demonic skills, which emerged through imitation of the angelic skills, were not inferior versions but stood on equal footing. When facing angelic ultimate skills, the decisive factor in victory or defeat still lied in the strength of will. Based on Guy's speculation, demonic powers were counterparts to the angelic ones, implying that Veldanava's 7 virtues would correspond to the 7 deadly sins. The world is always filled with intriguing causal relationships. Guy conjectured that each of the 7 virtues was matched with a sin. Lord of Justice with Lord of Wrath, Lord of Wisdom with Lord of Gluttony, Lord of Hope with Lord of Sloth, Lord of Purity with Lord of Lust, Lord of Charity with Lord of Greed, Lord of Patience with Lord of Envy, and Lord of Oath with Lord of Pride. However, these speculations might no longer be verifiable, as in Rimuru's case, skills like Lord of Oath and Lord of Gluttony had already evolved into new ultimate skills. Now aware of such crucial information, Rimuru dared not disclose his actions, especially as Seal remained silent at that moment. Rimuru could only continue to observe the situation. After Guy concluded his explanation about the skills, the discussion returned to the main topic. Guy stated that Dino's betrayal could now be easily explained and urged that if Dino were encountered again, he should not be treated as an ally. De Gruel, who had always had a good relationship with Dino, mentioned that Dino was a tricky opponent. Despite appearing lazy, Dino was unexpectedly powerful. Moreover, de Gruel was more concerned about Veldrein's current situation, feeling distressed about the direction things were heading. However, just as Rimuru was about to respond to de Gruel's concerns, Leon, once a hero, raised a sharp question. He emphasized that the focus shouldn't solely be on those who had been controlled but also on whether there were any bearers of angelic skills among them. Hearing Leon's question, Guy smiled broadly, pleased that the upright Leon would raise such a point, and stated that this was actually the most critical issue to address at this Walpurgis gathering. The issue at hand was whether those present would disclose such matters, as ultimate skills were each strong individual's trump card and revealing them recklessly was imprudent. Yet, concealing them could inevitably lead to suspicion among allies. As everyone remained silent, waiting for someone to break the ice, Ramiris burst out, questioning if everyone was doubting her. Guy, with a smile, clarified that Ramiris had been excluded from suspicion from the start. This was not discrimination. Rather, Ramiris's abilities were less about being gifted by Veldanava and more about what Veldanava relinquished from his omniscience and omnipotence. Milim joined in, admitting uncertainty about the nature of her own powers. Guy, who had once battled with Milim, knew her capabilities well, asserting without doubt that Milim's formidable power was a match for Lord of Justice, making it Lord of Wrath. Ramiris and Milim's interventions gradually eased the atmosphere. Subsequently, everyone began sharing about themselves. De Gruel, like Ramiris, possessed innate abilities. Luminous was identified with Lord of Lust, and Guy with Lord of Pride, both demonic ultimate skills. That left Rimuru and Leon. Rimuru decided to take the initiative, surprisingly rejecting to reveal. He had various skills, but preferred not to disclose them, reasoning that his abilities, including God of Void and Lord of Abundance, were so peculiar that mentioning them might not even be believed. However, Guy quickly rebutted this stance, indicating that Rimuru's approach was untenable amidst everyone's candor. Milim immediately sided with Rimuru, trusting him but also reminding him of their honey agreement. Ramiris also voiced support for Rimuru but requested 3 days' worth of cakes as her condition. Rimuru agreed without hesitation, thus winning Ramiris's support as well. Guy was left speechless. Ramiris then highlighted that the secret of Michael's Lord of Justice, including the ultimate dominion within, was revealed by Rimuru himself. If Rimuru were under control, it would be absurd for the enemy to allow him to divulge such a secret. Ramiris's unexpected rationale, seemingly beyond being merely bought off, struck a chord, leaving Guy without a retort, and even other demon lords in attendance nodding in agreement. Seizing the moment, Rimuru stealthily glanced at Luminous. Luminous, caught off guard by Rimuru's attempt to win her over, was intrigued when Rimuru mentioned Shuna's design of a new sexy swimsuit and the beach and seaside created by Rimuru and Ramiris in the labyrinth. Luminous, who enjoyed the sight of beautiful girls, quickly changed sides, affirming her belief in Rimuru from the start. Guy glared at Rimuru, incredulous that the legendary octogram demons could be so easily swayed by Rimuru. Rimuru then struck a pose towards Guy. Thus, Rimuru cleverly skirted around the suspicion directed at him. Attention then turned to Leon, the last one. Leon revealed his ultimate skill was Lord of Purity, one of the 7 virtues and a quintessential angelic power. Upon Leon's declaration, the atmosphere exploded into turmoil. Alright, that's all for this video. I hope everyone now has a more profound understanding of angelic and demonic ultimate skills. In our next episode, we will discuss the Demon Lord's responses and strategic deployments concerning the current situation. Rimuru, having many powerful super-awakened subordinates, is compelled by Guy's request to dispatch his subordinates across various nations for defensive support. The next episode promises to be quite engaging, especially with the story revolving around the notorious Primordial Carrera. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support is greatly appreciated. See you in the next one.